Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for listening to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gaelika Brown. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast platform and write a review. Also follow us, the GSMC Sex Podcast, on Twitter at GSMC_sex. Now, I am not a sex therapist. I love me some Dr. Ruth though, but I am not Dr. Ruth. However, I have spent some time on this earth and I have experienced some things and I've witnessed some things. And because you know what? I am an excellent listener. I've heard some things. I am a student of human behavior and I love to learn. I love to research topics and present what I've learned. And of course, I'm going to give my 2 cents about the matter, but I will also include what experts have to say. Now, let's talk about sex. In my opinion, the act of sex is a big deal. It's nothing to be passive and blasé about. 2 people coming together should be the most intimate thing you ever do with a person. It's more than just bearing your body. You're sharing your soul. Or as folks like to say these days, vibe. I caught a vibe with them, or we were vibing, so we hooked up. Well, that vibe connection is a soul connection. That vibe is what intensifies the sex and makes it more than just 2 people slapping skins. But I think sex has gotten so casual. It's so not a big deal to most people. People talk about it as if they're just going to the gym. Well, even at the gym, there is an unspoken etiquette. You wipe down the machine and sanitize it when you're done. You don't hog the machine when other people want to use it. That's gym etiquette. Today's episode is on sex etiquette. There are unspoken rules when it comes to sex. Some have fallen to the wayside with each new generation. Some you learn on the fly. Maybe you are the sex etiquette king or queen, and this will be a refresher for you. No matter where you are at in your sexual journey, I think the sex etiquette should be a mandatory WBT, web-based training, every couple of years. So let's start with hygiene. Nobody wants to make out with a funky person, let alone sleep with one. Hygiene is more than just brushing your teeth, sucking on an Altoid, and showering hours before the deed. For both men and women, it doesn't hurt to do a quick rinse or a baby wipe down before the deed. Yes, you showered this morning. I know that. But now it's 8 p.m. and it was 90 degrees outside and you perspired at some point during the day. If there is a possibility that somebody's nose is going to be near your private parts, even if you have no self-pride, be courteous to the person who has to endure the smell or even the taste. There are one-offs when you're in the heat of the moment and maybe you're washing dishes randomly and it turns into a sex session. I'm not saying be lame, pause things, and wipe down. Just maybe don't expect to get or give head if hygiene is a concern of yours. But on the flip side, if you get that booty call text, get your behind up and wipe down before they show up. If you're in a relationship, then you know y'all's sex patterns. If watching Power or some other hot, sexy show that gets y'all in a mood every time, if you're doing that, then maybe do a quick wipe down before you hit play. Grooming. Everyone has their preferred or has their preferences. Shaved, waxed, trim, maybe jungle. Who knows? To each their own. But whatever you or your partner's preference is, do something. Where the Wild Things Are is a great book. and nobody wants to see your adaptation. To me, the most important hygiene topic is STDs or STIs, sexually transmitted disease or sexually transmitted infections. It was STDs when I was growing up. I don't know when the switch to STIs happened or if there's a difference between the two. Either way, sexually transmitted anything is not the haps. Nobody likes to talk about this, especially pregame. But in my opinion, if you want to act like an adult and receive adult pleasures, then you need to be mature enough to talk about the last time you got tested. Sex can be fun, but when it comes to diseases and infections, this is not a game. In my early days of sex, when I thought I was grown, but too afraid to speak up, I got a couple treatable STIs. Thankfully, they were treatable. And one I got as a virgin, but that's another episode. So yeah, I take things seriously, and as a result, I may go a bit overboard with the testing. So much so that an eye specialist was asking me why my medical record had so many damn tests on it. My response? You is an eye doctor. Stay out my coochie. As a matter of fact, you ain't even my eye doctor. You are a specialist. So stay out my business. But on the real though, just like an article on Healthline entitled Signs and Symptoms of Common STDs in Men says, many men are quick to assume that if they had a sexually transmitted disease, they would know it. While most STDs do cause symptoms, many are easily mistaken for other conditions. In some cases, there are no symptoms at all. That's why it is important to get tested. Chlamydia, gonorrhea, and HPV, for the most part, don't have symptoms. And if there are symptoms, then they most likely are pain when urinating, penile discharge, swollen testicles, a green, white, or yellow discharge from the penis. The list gets nastier. So ladies, when a man has the opportunity to bed you for the first time and his sickly penis is hard, do you think he's gonna inform you of his symptoms? Hell no. That is why we need to look out for ourselves. Have the conversation if you are thinking about giving him some. Straight up ask, when is the last time you have been tested? Some may lie, and some may lie about the results, but medical records are online these days. Show me. Just like Cuba Gooding Jr. said, show me the money, and Jerry Maguire, show me the results. I haven't always had pleasant conversations on this topic. Some guys get offended. From my experience, those are the guys you want to avoid because they got something and don't want to talk about it, or have never been tested and have no idea if they have anything or not. But how dare you suggest that their junk is infected? So their defense could be them potentially doing you a favor. The healthy and or mature ones have no problem talking about it. If you don't want to talk about it and you choose to not wear a condom, get tested afterwards. It's recommended to get tested with every new partner if you are not in a monogamous relationship or if you suspect your mate is cheating on you. Okay, so now that the unpleasantries have been discussed, let's get to the deed. Elite Daily has an article entitled 22 Simple Rules of Sex Etiquette We Are Too Afraid to Talk About. It's mainly written towards millennials, but it translates to all generations. We are not going to discuss all 22, but let's take a look at number 1. You can't get what you don't ask for. I agree. Use your words. Unless you are sleeping with a mind-reading mutant, speak up about what you want or don't want. If you are fortunate to sleep with someone who actually pays attention to your body and how it reacts, then you may not have to speak up as much. But then again, body reading only goes so far. If a guy tries to push your head down when all he needed to say was, put your mouth on it, then tell him. If he refuses to give you head but expects you to give him head and you ain't down for it, then don't do it. I'm a Libra. We are all about justice, balance, and equality because we are scales. So if you don't want to give me head, then you ain't getting head. I can throw a rock and find a willing participant in cunnilingus, so kick rocks, my guy. AskMe.com has an article entitled 10 Common Sex Etiquette Mistakes. It's interesting because it is written towards men as if the rules apply towards every woman. For example, the number 7 sex etiquette mistake is not cuddling. It says, immediately getting up and leaving the room post-coitus is a bad move etiquette-wise. It may not be your favorite thing to do, but you should put in the obligatory cuddle time before you get out of bed. Most women appreciate it, and many of them expect it. Plus, if you relax and get into it, you'll probably enjoy it as well. Hey, it can even lead to some lazy sex. Now, I prefer what number 11 in Elite's article says. Don't assume you are spending the night. It says, ladies and gentlemen, just because sexual relations took place does not mean there is an implied sleepover. This especially goes for a one-night stand. Be prepared to take a hint and get a cab home. Dudes, call the girl a cab. I don't know why people are using cabs. Let's say Uber or Lyft. Call the girl some sort of ride-sharing app if you don't want her to stay. She'll let you see you naked. It's the least you can do. Now, my 2 cents. Depending on who you were sleeping with, cuddles may be welcomed or a peace out may be appreciated. Never assume anything. I had a cuddy buddy situation years ago that made me feel terrible for asking him to leave because he assumed he could stay. I don't know why he assumed that. He never stayed before. We didn't have a friendship. It was strictly sexual. So he falls asleep afterwards, and I called myself being kind by allowing him to nap for a couple of hours. I left the room and watched some Grey's Anatomy, some How to Get Away with Murder, and I politely woke him up and asked him to leave after a 2-hour nap. This hurt the poor fella's feelings. So hey, don't assume every chick wants to cuddle with your behind, because sometimes we don't. We are not all the same. Like an article I found on Diole, Diole, I have no idea, .com, entitled 12 Sex Etiquette Rules Every Man Should Know. They seem to think that, listen to their rule number 3. After sex, remember to touch your woman and tell her something nice. Do not turn away from your partner and snore or run to the shower to clean yourself as soon as possible. Now, come on now, what are we, dogs? Give her a treat and pat her on the head after sex. Some more not so great advice the article gave is sex etiquette rule number 7. If you want to be a real gentleman in bed, you must know that women do not like to change positions very often. They prefer to change a couple of positions in a sexual act. That is why they do not want you to swing or twirl them around. It's just not sensible. Yeah, again, we are not all the same. I don't know if it's true that some prefer the same position, but I do know that some don't mind being swung and flipped into many positions either. So that wraps up this segment.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Gaelika Brown. This episode is about sex etiquette. Let's look at number 7 on Elite's 22 Simple Rules of Sex Etiquette we're too afraid to discuss. Number 7. This isn't the library. Make some noise. Nothing is creepier than having sex with a person who's mute during the act. If you like something, let your partner know with a little oh and ah action. Please, if you give vocal affirmation, you're much more likely to get more of the good stuff. So that's what the article says. But even that not so accurate etiquette list for men on that DIOLLI.com site, they actually agree. Their number one rule is, if you want to make love correctly, do not behave like a lifeless piece of wood. I mean, you can moan, move, and change positions, though not very often. There they go with that women don't like to change positions often nonsense. But I do agree with the not laying like a lifeless piece of wood statement. I mean, if it is good, encourage your partner. Let them know so they don't stop. Plus, that is a great confidence booster, and that will promote a great sexual performance from that person. Plus, if it's good, how do you not make noise? That reminds me of the phrase, I'm weak, from back in the day. People would use it to let people know how amused they were in a situation. Yo, did you see her trip? I'm weak. But they wouldn't even be smiling as they said it. Yo, I'm weak. Really? 'Cause your face says otherwise. I mean, if you ain't soliciting any sounds out of me during sex, then that damn for sure is not a good sign. Okay, so what do you do about noise if you have roommates? Try to be courteous and play music and keep a respectable volume. I mean, having to keep a respectable volume sucks. It makes number 7, this ain't a library, make some noise, hard to accomplish. Plus, it's not as enjoyable. But if you want your roommates to like you or your partner and you want to keep that living situation, you should at least try. And roommates. Bustle.com has an article entitled 7 Ways to Deal with a Roommate Who Has Loud Sex. Number 2 suggests turn up the music to drown out the sound. You can do the same thing with the TV. Number 6, go for a walk. Number 5, shrug it off. That's pretty much what I prefer. The number 5. I mean, it says, I've had roommates that totally had no problem with sex noises. They were like, meh, part of life. Try taking on that attitude next time you get irritated by the symphony that your roommate's knocking boots is doing. So, my 2 cents. I've had roommates that I could hear have sex, and I've had roommates that our neighbors could hear have sex too. And I have always had that part of life attitude. Now, depending on the roommates, my face may be disgusted if my mind tries to create a visual to accomplish or to accompany the sound. Blah. But, nonetheless, it's a part of life. I'm never hating on anyone that is getting some. Get yours. And don't hate when I get mine. Okay. Now, I found a post on Reddit about a chick complaining about her roommates having loud sex. Don't be this chick. I have 2 roommates that don't consider it disrespectful to have loud sex all the time when other people are home. One of them shares a room with me and will lock me out of my room to have loud sex with her boyfriend. Like, it's so loud, you can hear it whenever or wherever you go in the house. It's like they want us to hear. Just, yeah, over and over. Screaming and slapping and all that good stuff. The first couple of times I let it go because I was hoping it was just a one-off kind of thing. After that, I started politely asking them to quiet down. I have 2 roommates that do this. They always would say, oh, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, and then do it again the next week. This has been going on since we all moved in 3 to 4 months ago. Yesterday, they were doing it yet again. At this point, I've asked them each at least on 5 separate occasions to keep it quiet. This time, I was fed up, so I was kind of snarky and said something in our group chat like, really, guys? It's not that hard to be quiet. They exploded on me, telling me they don't need my comments, saying that there's nothing wrong with sex, which yes, there isn't, but if you're disturbing your housemates, that's when it becomes a problem. As if I was shaming them for being sexual and telling me to stop bossing them around all the time. One girl said that the moaning is completely uncontrollable and that this is my house. Yes, she typed it in caps, LOL. And she should be able to do what she wants. She actually had the gall to tell me that it makes them uncomfortable when I call them out about having loud sex. Then the other girl straight up lies to my face and says she's pretty sure she hears me hooking up with my boyfriend when we've literally only hooked up once. And she wasn't even home. You know, I got some 2 cents to add to this one. Okay, so there is some disrespect on the getting some roommates, and it doesn't sound like they are trying to be courteous at all. But at the same time, this chick that took the time to write a long ass post, yes, there is more that I didn't read. She needs a life. Clearly her problem is lack of sex, since she said, we've literally only hooked up once. Okay, so you ain't getting none. That's the problem. If you was getting some on the regular, you wouldn't have time to complain on the internet. If homie was hitting it right, you wouldn't be jelly hearing your homies having good sex or hearing your roommates having good sex. She goes on to write, we talked again, me and my loud roommate. And she admitted that she thinks loud sex is disturbing to other housemates, but she, quote, can't promise, end quote, that she won't do it again because she's, quote, not someone that makes promises, end quote. So I said, you're fully aware that you're disturbing other housemates, but you're still going to continue with your behavior just because you feel like it? She was like, quote, it's just natural. It's completely uncontrollable, end quote. I think I'm going to tell her that I can't promise I won't record her loud moaning and, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and play it for our landlord, Chris, to hear. OMG, this chick is such a hater. You are a creeper if you record the act, you weirdo. And clearly she has never had a good orgasm. Because if she has, she would know it's just natural. It's completely uncontrollable. Since her man can't bring her that joy, maybe she needs to masturbate, learn her body, and figure out how to get to that uncontrollable orgasm on her own. Okay, I'll play devil's advocate and say to the loud roommate, if you truly can't control the volume, don't have sex with your housemates, or definitely don't have sex with your housemates. Don't have sex with when your housemates are home. Plan some special Airbnb and hotel nights. Ask your roommates if there is a night you can have the place to yourself, or just move out. It all sucks and is an inconvenience to you, but on the real, you are inconveniencing your roommates. So suck it up and be a respectable adult. But the bottom line is, if sex is done well, there will be some associated sounds. We will take a break and return and discuss after sex etiquette.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Gaelika Brown, and we have been talking about sex etiquette. Now that the sex has been had, let's talk about that after sex call or text. On lovepanky.com, I found an article entitled The Dreaded After Sex Call Etiquette. The author writes, the after sex call is the prerequisite acknowledgement of the fact that you did it and whether or not you and your partner will agree to a repeat. It can sometimes start off as a thank you for last night and end with, so when am I seeing you again? The after sex call will tell you a lot about the person you slept with, and it will even allow you to discover some truths about yourself and how you feel about the situation. All in all, this is the call that will make or break your sanity in terms of the intimate night you just had. Is the after sex call necessary? For one night stands, after sex calls are unnecessary and usually frowned upon. If the fact that it was a one night stand isn't clear, you can use the after sex call to confirm whether or not there will be a repeat of the night before. It is necessary because not knowing where you stand can make you feel anxious about how your night went. No matter how great a time you had, you'll never know how a person will feel about you the next day, especially after you've had sex. And I personally would just like to say that it doesn't have to be a phone call. Texting is fine in this day and age. So back to the article. When is it okay to call? We recommend making the after sex call the night after you've been together. It will give you enough time to recover and have something else to talk about besides what happened on your date. Aside from that, it will give you and your partner a little time to miss each other. The do's. Number 1, call at night on a work day before your bedtime. The after sex call is not an excuse for you to chat with the person you slept with. Consider it a business call. Therefore, it should be done when you are both available and when your partner is likely to answer their phone. Number 2, think carefully about what you want. Before you make that call, prepare what you're going to say. I'm not saying you should write a speech down. Just make sure that you know what you're going to say or ask before you make the call. All right, my 2 cents. I think this article thus far is a bit too serious. In my opinion, the pursuer should be the one initiating contact, whether it is same-sex or hetero. Personally, I let the guy make all the first moves. If he asks me out, if he kissed me first, if we are intimate, then I'm waiting for you to text me. I don't expect calls these days. If I get a call, bonus points for that fellow. But a text about how great last night was is perfectly fine. When it comes to texts, you can do it any part of the day, but try to do it when you think they're available and will actually respond. I think within 24 hours is perfect. If 48 hours goes by, then I would think you were not that interested. And if you hear nothing, clearly they give 0 F's about you. So move on. Number 2 on the don't list is don't call or text them over and over again. Why are you being so clingy? Is it their reply? Is their reply going to save you from a peril worse than death? If they're not replying, they're busy. Twice is enough for one day, and thrice is enough for a week. After that, just stop, because it means they will never reply, or they will only call you when they have an itch they need you to scratch. Number 5, acknowledge them when it takes them more than a week to call back. Make them work for it. If they called back within a few days, It's common courtesy to return a call within 24 hours. If it takes longer than that, they're either dead or they're avoiding you. It's that simple. If the call or text didn't go as planned, the article says, don't entertain assholes. You deserve better than a guy who only wants you for sex. Don't lull yourself into thinking otherwise, especially if the signs are there. No after sex call or text. He sends late nights, still up messages. He never takes you out on a legitimate date ever again after that one night. And McDonald's drive-in doesn't count. Speaking of assholes, thoughtcatalog.com has an article entitled 13 Guys Reveal Why They Don't Call Back After Sex. These are actual quotes. 'Cause you were shit in bed. You could not suck dick properly. Did not put out enough. Not dirty in bed. You were ugly. Tits too small. Did not like licking your pussy. Could not kiss. No heat. Boring personality. Ass too big or too small. Found a better girl. That was literally, someone literally wrote that. Terrible writing. Number 2. Well, personally, the allure of sex with a girl is exciting. And once you have it, there's nothing exciting left. You've had it all. Number 3. Likely you are pretty, but that's not always necessary. Most likely reason is you were a simple conquest, a notch. Men like the feeling of power, and they take your most valuable and priceless treasure, you. Alternatively, you may not be very good at sex. Therefore, there is no reason to call back. If the latter is the case, learn to do better. Number 4. Well, I think it's because there's always the next one. If you have sex with a girl, you start to think, I wonder what the next girl will do. Will she be dirtier? Will she be better looking? I suppose the analogy would be, why do women need another pair of shoes? Number 5. If they liked it, they would call back. If they don't, that means they didn't like something. Okay, so those men are idiots. And if you didn't get a call or a text from one of those types of men, they did you a favor, girl. And I'm sure their etiquette in every other department is trash as well. You can tell a lot about a person when it comes to their sex etiquette. But don't be too judgmental, because unfortunately, most people don't know about some of these unspoken rules. Some of them are common sense and basic human decency, but some may warrant a conversation. As with any type of relationship, communication is key. Maybe your partner doesn't know that every time you go down on them, you are pulling pubic hairs out of your teeth. Once they know, they may start grooming down there. The whole point of sexual etiquette isn't to be judgmental or put limitations in the bedroom. It is to make both parties feel equally respected, comfortable, and content. I'm going to say that again. The whole point of sexual etiquette isn't to be judgmental or put limitations in the bedroom. It is to make both parties feel equally respected, comfortable, and content. I definitely appreciate your time. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Until next time, I'm Gaelika Brown.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.